Hi everybody! In this bonus training, I'm going to be going over how to test the skills of a graphic artist so that you can find the perfect one for you. Now, the terms graphic artist and graphic designer are used interchangeably. So when I say graphic artist, just remember I'm really talking about both. So when you're looking to hire this person, you want to find out two specific things. Number one, what design software are they familiar with? And number two, what is their level of expertise with that program? There's basically three programs that graphic artists use. The first is Adobe Photoshop, which is used for image editing and composition. The second is Adobe Illustrator, and that's used for creating vector graphics and illustrations. And the third is Adobe InDesign, which is used for page design, layout, and publishing. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about each of these. Adobe Photoshop is mainly used for designing websites, banner ads, and cleaning up photos. So let's look at a couple samples of someone using Photoshop. In this first sample, you can see that they're using Photoshop to clean up and manipulate this photo to make it look really nice. In this sample, a graphic artist used a regular photograph and then used Photoshop to manipulate it to look like the avatar. Here you can see that Photoshop was used to design the layout of a web page. Here's someone using Photoshop to design the background and the links for a website. The next program is Adobe Illustrator, and as I said before, this is used for creating vector graphics and illustrations. Now, I'm sure most of you have seen the Joy-Proof overview video that you use to orient your remote employees about how Joy-Proof works. This video is animated, but before we had it animated, we had to hire an illustrator to create the images, to create the character and all the images that are in the video. So this is a sample of what an illustrator would do. But let's go ahead and look at a couple more examples. Both of these images here were created using Adobe Illustrator. Another graphic artist used Illustrator to create this design. So you can see in these samples that these graphic artists are basically creating images from scratch. Now, another thing that you can use Adobe Illustrator for is to have a graphic artist create advanced images and characters for t-shirt designs. Now, not just text designs, but actual images and unique characters. Now, the third software that graphic artists will use is Adobe InDesign. And they're going to use this software mostly for creating printed materials. For example, here is a graphic artist who used Adobe InDesign to create the layout of a newspaper. Here's another example of a graphic artist using InDesign to create the layout of a magazine. And another thing that InDesign is commonly used for is complex layouts for infographics, as you can see here. Now, I wanted to show you samples of what a graphic artist would use each of these software programs for, but realistically, 99% of you are just going to need a graphic artist that has experience with Adobe Photoshop so that they can help you create your websites, your landing pages, banner ads, cleaning up photos for you, all of that kind of stuff. All right, so now I'm going to show you how Gonzalo hires his graphic artists, and we're going to go ahead and start with the job posting. Now, this type of job posting that he uses, it can be used on all three types of outsourcing sites that I covered in the outsourcing sites roadmap. Your traditional job posting websites, your classified job posting websites, and your freelancer websites. It can be used for all three. Actually, before I get into too much detail with the job posting, I want to share a little bit about how Gonzalo hires his graphic designers. He really doesn't have a need very often to hire a full-time, 40-hour-a-week graphic designer. Occasionally, he may need somebody full-time if he's coming out with a big product launch, but still, he'll only need them full-time for like 3 weeks. But then after that, he'll have a design job here and there. So for the most part, he's found that it's really not efficient to have a full-time graphic artist on staff. For these people, designing is really their passion, and they don't really want to be doing lead generation for him on their downtime. They just want to design. So what he does is he'll hire designers either on an hourly basis or a project basis. So let me give you 2 examples of how this works. If he knows he's going to need a specific type of task done over and over again, he'll hire somebody on a per project flat fee. For example, he'll have t-shirts designed for a promotional event. He'll hire somebody to design the t-shirt, and he may pay, $25 for the design, and then he'll just keep going back to that same person and pay that flat fee every time he has a new design created. The second example is hiring for website mock-up design. And he'll pay anywhere from $75 to $100 for one mock-up for a website. And one of the requirements is that they have to make modifications until he is satisfied with the finished product. Now, for this type of job, he will try to negotiate a per project fee, because sometimes designers will try to rack up a lot of hours trying to design this website. And we know that it really doesn't take 300 hours to design a mock-up. Now, that being said, he will pay a designer on an hourly basis if it's just to do ongoing changes and small little modifications, because it's not really worth his time to try to find somebody and negotiate for a flat fee for a project. They're just short little tasks that he doesn't mind paying hourly for. So he does hire designers both ways, on an hourly basis and a per project flat fee basis. Now, the sample test task that I'm going to be showing you that he used to hire a designer, it was to hire a designer on an hourly basis, but you can use the same type of test task to hire somebody on a project basis. Now, on a side note, one of the things I want to quickly address is paying graphic artists to do the test task. Sometimes you'll have these graphic artists email you and say, it's really unprofessional that you're requiring me to do this. And our motto is, some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. And as you've probably seen from our hiring system and our funnel, there are a lot of people that are willing to do the test tasks, and you can find amazing skill level using this system. And this is no different. You will get a lot of people that are willing to do the test task for you, which is your goal. Now, Gonzalo rarely pays for people to take the test. You'll see in the job posting that I'm going to show you, he did offer to pay, but only to the person that he's happy with their work and he ends up hiring. So basically, winner takes all. Now, this is your personal preference. I'm just sharing with you what Gonzalo does. But like I said, it's up to you how you want to handle this issue. So now let's take a look at the job posting and how he communicates what he wants and what he expects. So the first thing we have here is the job posting title or the headline. Now, just like our headline that we use to hire virtual assistants, there's a very specific reason why Gonzalo uses this type of headline to hire his graphic artists. 3 graphic artists needed to design website PSDs, permanent. So the first thing you might be wondering is why he's asking for 3 graphic artists instead of just 1. And the reason behind this is because there are going to be graphic artists that don't think they're as talented as others. And so if they think this is a position just for one person, they're not as likely to apply. So by saying that we're hiring for 3 graphic artists, that's going to increase the number of applicants that we get into our funnel. And the second thing that sticks out is that he says permanent. And that is because he wants to hire somebody on an ongoing basis. So if somebody thinks that this is just going to be a one-time thing, they're not as likely to apply. Now, just on a side note, Gonzalo really does hire 2 to 3 graphic artists at the same time, just because it doesn't cost him any more to have somebody on standby, just in case somebody flakes out or somebody doesn't perform like they said they will or perform up to his expectations. So really, this headline is truthful, and at the same time, it does attract more qualified applicants. Now on to the job description. Let's look at this first section here. I am looking to add 3 more designers to join our team of experts. I am looking for a graphic artist that can design Photoshop PSDs of websites so I can give it to my web programmer to convert it into HTML. I own over 100 domains. The thing that sticks out here is that he's specifically saying what kind of program they need to be able to use. And again, he's reiterating that he's looking to hire 3 more designers. The next line is, I have a lot of work and do not have time for contractors that say they can do the work and their skill level is low. So this sentence does a couple things. First of all, they can tell that he's really straight. Just from this one sentence, they can tell that he doesn't want somebody that doesn't have the skill level that he wants. And the second thing is it's setting them up to understand why they're going to be doing a test task. And then he goes right into stating, to test your skill, I need you to do the following task as described below. If you show talent and are selected, you will be paid for your design. I will pay you for the amount of time you told me it took you. So, he's using the honor system for that. Now, another reason that he says this, I will pay you for the amount of time you told me it took you, is that he uses it as a gauge as part of the elimination process. If one designer says it took them 1 hour and another designer says it took them 10, of course, he doesn't want to hire the person that says it took them 10 hours to do the same type of task. So you can see there's a little bit of psychology behind that sentence as well. And then the last sentence here, I will select the first 2 graphic artists that have great skill and a great hourly rate. And then he goes into the details of the test task. I need you to design the following: a pop-up page. I need you to design something similar to the pop-up box that is on this page. And then he gives the link to that page. And just in case the pop-up box doesn't appear on this page when they go to the link, he also does a separate screen capture of that image. So that's the link here where it says see image instructions. He captures that separately so that they can see it. And then he also gives them another link to give them some different design ideas and some inspiration. Now, you might be wondering why he would use a pop-up box as a test task and not something more simple like a logo. And there's a couple reasons. The first is that he doesn't want to give them the opportunity to copy something from the internet, which is very, very easy to do with a logo. And the other reason is that a pop-up box is still simple enough. They can do it fairly quickly, but it's also challenging enough that it still showcases their design ability. And you can also see if their style matches your vision. Now, in the last section here, he reiterates, remember, I only need the pop-up part designed. You can use any colors or style, just make it look nice. Please use your creativity to make the layout and design attractive to visitors and create a feeling of trustworthiness. All I'm providing is some guidance as to what we need on the page, but use your best judgment to make it look great. Now, the reason why his instructions in this section are a little bit vague is that he doesn't want to instruct every element of their design. That's why he's hiring a graphic artist. He wants them to take what little guidance he gives them and then be able to run with it. And in the last part here, he states what specific elements the pop-up needs to have. And again, he reiterates any other info you think should be on it. Once they look at the different samples that he's given them, they can also decide what else would be useful to have in that pop-up. And then he gives them an attachment of the logos that he wants them to use in the pop-up. And as you can see, this job posting was used on Odesk. Now, if you're using a traditional job posting website like Online Jobs, PH, or even a classified ad posting website, you can use the job posting template that we use to hire VAs. All you would have to do is just modify it for the graphic artist. So you could say, I'm looking for a graphic artist to help design, and then you would fill in the blank for what you need. So I'm looking for a graphic artist to help design landing pages, banner ads, etc. And the main difference is that in addition to having them email you their resume, you're also going to ask them to send samples of their work or a link to their portfolio to your email. Remember, in the VA job posting, you just ask them to send their resume. But for this one, you're also going to ask them to send samples of their work or a link to their portfolio. Now, you can still do an employer video because it will still increase the number and quality of applicants that you get into your funnel, which is your main goal. You're also still going to set up a canned response email inviting them to the next phase of the interview process, which will be the test task that I've shown you. Now, as you already learned when hiring a VA, you want to test multiple skills, which is why we have 2 phases of test tasks. But for graphic artists, you're only really testing 1 skill. So you can see with just this 1 test task if they have the skill that you need. So you can just cut out the second set of test tasks in the automated hiring funnel. Now, I'm sure some of you are curious, so I want to show you some of the samples that we got back from this specific job posting. But first, I want to let you know that we do have some downloads for you below this video. The first is a sample of this freelancer website job posting that we went over. You can use it for your own. You can edit it to fit your specific need. And then also a sample canned email response that you can use for the graphic designers. So now on to the samples. These are actual submissions from graphic artists for this specific job posting. And as you can see, as we look at these different samples, there's definitely a difference in skill level among these different applicants. And the other thing it showcases is how well they follow directions and at the same time use their own creativity, which is what Gonzalo wanted to see. So I hope you can see, looking through these samples, the quality of work that you can get using this type of hiring process for your graphic artists.